Hello, Space Cat chums! It's me, Jules, and yes, I still haven't finished Vincent and the Mermaid. If you look way back at this series, you'll see that I got to the point where I was showing it to my publisher. Since then, I've been reworking the format and working on the illustrations, and I've now got to the point where I'm in the final stages of those images. I ended the last video in this series with painting this little lady, and she had morphed from somebody looking a little bit more girly, but actually when I thought about her, I kind of liked what she was wearing, and I liked her tail, but I wasn't mad on the curly mad hair. So I did a bit more work and I came up with this version. And I really like her hair, that it's kind of sticking out all over the place. It's got the crab, it's got a shell, it's got a few bits of seaweed hanging out of it, and I just tinkered with the colours a little bit as well. So I've made her headscarf yellow, and actually it's white in my final pictures instead of it being green, and I've given her t-shirt a little bit more interest and slightly changed the colour on her waistband. And I think this one, she's a little bit more kind of piratey, punky, a bit more off the moment, and I don't know, she's just feels a little bit more that she's got something about her that I really like. This is the first spread that you see her in when Vincent discovers the mermaid crying on a stone. He hears her sobbing, and I love all her little friends down the bottom there. I've had lots of joy drawing these little guys, and I think she works quite well, and I think he works quite well as well. Vincent, there's Vincent. And I've had a lot of fun with making these watercolour patterns. I've got lots and lots of illustrations. I've got something like, we're getting on for 100 now, and some of them I've done the background separately so that I can then put a character on them in front when I get to doing editing on my Mac. I also wanted to show you how things can go a little bit wrong sometimes, and why it's really important to keep your images around you so that you've got really good reference material. So this is an image from quite early on when Vincent is flying along the coast and he sees his friend Wally the whale, and it's this image of him goes with this, and again I was going to drop them into a background. Looking at our Wally the whale friend, when I made this picture I painted him to be quite blue. I've since painted a bit of pinky magenta over the top of it, which was why he looks a bit more purple, and he's very, if I try and focus that closely, you can see there's a lot of texture and marks in there, and I didn't really like that. But I'd made the mistake of starting off with him being this blue colour, and a bit later on when I'd come back, I'd had a little bit of a break, hadn't looked properly, and when I started painting Wally the whale further on and done several versions of him in different spreads, he was really quite purpley rather than blue. And I'd done quite a few of him with this colour, so I didn't really want to go back and change all of them, particularly because, as you can see, this one, he's a double page spread, it's quite a large image. I didn't want to do that again if I didn't need to, because my feeling is every time you do one, if you have to do it, you have to do it, but if you don't have to do it, you do lose a little bit of spontaneity. If you redo work and redo work, every time you do it, you lose a little bit of that creative spark. So instead of which, I redid this image, and there he is, much more pinky purple. I did the whole thing, and I didn't leave Vincent out on this picture, but I'm not convinced that I love that image. So what I might do actually is, when I get to put him on my computer, I might actually cut him out and drop him in, because I think he's much more fun looking, and He's a bit, I don't know, there's something about his shape that I'm not quite mad about, so I might end up using him. If you want to see the progression of how I make these pictures, then I start out with little thumbnails that gives me an idea as to what's going on the page. And then I will do, this is layout paper, so it's fairly transparent, but not as transparent as tracing paper. I draw my image in that in black and white and pencil, and then I use this underneath a piece of watercolour paper and trace through. That's a finished piece. And this is using Tombow Fudenosuke brush pens. That's my finished piece. Now this is actually a colouring page, so I'm not going to do any more to this page at all. I'm not going to put any paint on it because it's there for people to colour in themselves. All it needs now is the little speech bubble that says colour this page coming out of his mouth. It's got all the details on that it needs, and I'm just going to scan it in like that. But I thought what we could do together, if you'll hang in there with me, is this page, which is quite an in-depth look at the sea floor. And there's the layout page with all the details on. So I'll be referring back to this because this does have a few things on it that I need to look at. In particular, this page is, it's got seahorses hiding on it, and you have to find the seahorses. And I've marked on the edge of the page a little tiny cross outside of where the printing area is to remind me where they are, because they are hiding a bit. There's one here, one there, another one hiding there, one there. Where's the last one? Oh, in there. He's really hiding. So that's going to be a hard one to find. That's number 5. And I've given myself also a few little markers as to what colours to use. So, for example, I've got red anemone there. And also on the side to remind me what the fish are. So these are mackerel, that one's bass. So I can then go back at some point and just make sure that I've got the right colouring. I will let you into a teeny tiny secret. When I was drawing this, I taped it down with masking tape along the edges, and I ripped a bit of paper here. So I know if I paint that area, then it will look really different to the area next to it. So I think what I'm probably going to do is leave this area unpainted, apart from the fish and the little bits of coral there. I'm going to leave the background unpainted, and I'll drop that in when I've finished this painting. I will, like I've done before, I will paint a background, and then I will merge the two together when it comes to doing any editing and manipulation on the computer. I did not want to put you through the trauma of watching me paint slowly for 5 hours, so I've sped this up and just concentrated on one area of the pinky purple seahorse. I've been trying to make it not too easy to find them, but also bearing in mind that this book is for 5 to 7-year-olds, not too hard either. There's little more frustrating than a spotter quiz if you can't find any of the spotties. After I'd finished this piece, I went back over my thumbnails and checked off each illustration that I'd completed, and I discovered around 6 images that needed to be repainted. So, in my outro for this film, where I joyfully announce this part of the process is done, well, ignore that. Well, phew-wee. That has literally taken me all day to do, probably about 5 hours. I started off with watercolour, and I then did some of the details with the Derwent Inktense watercolour pencils. I think that could well be the last spread that I needed to complete before I start scanning everything in, and then adding the text to the pages. Next week, I'll be looking at the nursery rhyme of Little Bo Peep and digging a little bit deeper into the character of that so-called good girl. Watch out for that, there might be some spurious information. Oh, I do love a made-up fact. I'm off to ask a wood ant if he really would. I will see you next week. Nanu nanu.